How you doing, everyone? Welcome back. You know, I had a video, I don't know, maybe a week or so ago that really kind of exploded regarding trans individuals and mass shootings. I've got, over 12,500 views on that particular video, which, is something like 2,100% my number of current subscribers, right? And the reason I bring up that video is, there have been some pretty bigoted comments on, well, that video and other subsequent videos from certain individuals. And you know what? I get it because you're misinformed, but some of you choose to remain misinformed and choose not to educate yourself. Now, admittedly, I was not well informed on transgender individuals, and I'm still really not all that informed, but I know more than I did, and the reason I know more than I did is because I have actually, first of all, listened to the trans individuals who have commented on my videos. And second of all, I've done not a ton of research, but I've done some research so that I can better understand. And the reason that I want to better understand trans individuals is because you're human beings just like the rest of us. It's the same reason that I want to understand the guy that lives right next door, right? He comes from a different culture, right? He is not from around these parts. You wouldn't know it by looking at him, but he's not from around here. It's the same reason that I want to understand anyone, because we all have more in common than what we have that separates us. That's just the reality of the situation. I mean, we're all born, we all live, we all die, right? And hopefully along the way we learn something and we leave something positive behind, right? Leave a positive memory for those that we leave behind when we're gone, okay? So, with that in mind, right, I'm going to address some of the bigoted comments, based on things that I've learned. Now, I ignorantly believed that all trans people had gender dysphoria. I now know that that is not the case. And I had somebody in my comments basically tell a trans person to get help with their dysphoria, or I hope you get help with your dysphoria. And now keep in mind, it was a trans person who informed me that that not all trans people have gender dysphoria. Okay? And, this person said that, when I said not all trans people have gender dysphoria, this person basically said that I'm ignorant and that I don't know science. All right, well, no, I'm not a scientist, but I can do a little bit of research and find some information, right? And that information is that, yes, trans people do have gender incongruence, which gender incongruence doesn't necessarily make someone trans. It could mean that, you're non-binary or gender fluid or, all the, and I'm sorry, I don't know all the terms, right? I don't know all the terms. sometimes, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. But I am going to say that I understand that you are human beings, and I'm not intentionally being disrespectful when I don't know. All right? And, at one point, I wouldn't have cared to know any of this, right? Because it doesn't affect me, right? Well, your existence doesn't affect me. Not directly. So, why should I hate you? Despite the fact that at one time, I don't know that I necessarily hated trans people, but I did have some very bigoted views based on ignorance. Now, having learned some things, those views have changed. And my father, who has been gone for 11 and a half years now, once said, actually more than once said, that the only people who have never changed their views are people who have never learned anything. And my grandmother told me that the only wasted day is a day where you don't learn something. So I make it a point to learn things. And if I don't change my thinking on something, I at least want to challenge my thinking on some things, right? Because I don't necessarily understand everything, and I'm not going to pretend that I do, right? So, when trans individuals are telling me, hey, you know what? This is what's going on here, and we're not all the same. All right, great. I'm gonna listen to that, right? Just like, I did a video about the disparity between black and white crime rates. And we like to stereotype black people as criminals, right? Or, well, black men as criminals and black women as welfare queens, right? That's how we like to stereotype them, even though that's really not accurate. When you adjust for socioeconomic status, those disparities disappear, right? Actually, white people are more likely, this is Penelope, by the way, she wants to make her appearance. This is my girl. She adopted me. I didn't adopt her. She adopted me. But where was I before this girl so rudely interrupted me? Yeah, actually, white people are really more likely to receive public assistance. And if you want to break it down by rural and urban, we tend to think of urban people as being more people of color, black individuals particularly, whereas we try to think of rural people as being more, well, looking like me, right? I mean, I'm out here in Iowa, and I'm in more of a suburban type community, but I know a lot of rural people just because the fact that, well, it's Iowa, right? It's kind of hard not to know rural people. And, when oh, let me get her out of the she wants to be the star of the show. Rural people are actually more likely to receive assistance than urban people. Why is that? My guess is that there are just more opportunities in cities than there are out in the boonies, right? That's what makes sense to me. And I haven't actually researched that, but that's just kind of what makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any reason that we can't, continue to break down barriers. There's no reason to continue the white male supremacy narrative that we have. I mean, everyone has a place in our society, or at least they should. And, nope, she's coming back. Yeah, everyone has a place in our society. Everyone should be welcome in our society because, well, this is supposed to be a melting pot, right? We are supposed to have people from every background, every walk of life. This is supposed to be a land of opportunity with liberty and justice for all, right? At least those are the last words of our Pledge of Allegiance. Now, some people would say that we have tyranny and injustice for all, and currently, that's hard to argue with that. No. Get her out of the way again. She's such a troublemaker. But I allow it because, she's cute. So. But, yeah, I mean, it's like, actually, speaking of cats, right? Penelope, you see what she looks like. Perhaps you've seen a video where George made an appearance. He's a big orange cat. In fact, he's right over there. And I had one recently where Elliot, he is primarily white with a little bit of black on him. He was up on my shoulder and he jumped off. Maybe you've seen that video. And that little girl is really causing trouble right now. She's behind my computer and rubbing up against my camera and everything else. So, I also have, Chester, who is predominantly white with some orange on him. And, well, she's finally going to get down. And then there's Eva, who is predominantly black with a little bit of white on her, right? So we have 5 different cats with, and they all look very different from each other. They all have very different personalities from each other. And is there conflict between the cats? Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes. Generally, though, no, not really. Why is that? Well, because they just see each other as cats, George doesn't think he's better because, he's a big orange guy. And Penelope doesn't think that she's better because she's a gray tabby. And I think Chester thinks he's better than everybody else because he's the smart one. I think he thinks he's supposed to be an astrophysicist or something. But other than that, I mean, he's, well, and Eva, she's kind of a troublemaker, but That's all right. And Elliot is also a troublemaker. He is proof. He alone is proof that the Earth is indeed round and not flat. But yeah, the cats all get along, and why is that? Despite all their differences. Because they have more in common than they have different. Right? Just like me and you, whoever you are, whether you're a person of color, whether you're a woman, whether you're a trans person or somewhere else on the spectrum of LGBTQ, whether you have a mental difference, even if it's something as insignificant as I have brown eyes and you have blue eyes, right? Even if it's something that insignificant, right? What difference does it make? Cut us open and we all bleed red, right? Shouldn't that really be the main thing? Shouldn't that really be the main thing? I think it should be. And hopefully you will all agree with that. I know most of my audience agrees with that. And, that animals don't see the differences, right? They don't see the differences in colors, And it's not that they don't see the differences, they don't care about those differences. Why should we? Why should we? I live in the state of Iowa, which is the only state that actually once explicitly had protections for trans individuals, as far as our civil rights laws were concerned. And then effective July 1st of this year, the state very specifically removed protections for trans individuals, which makes it very explicitly legal to discriminate against trans people, whereas there are something like 28 other states that it's legal to discriminate against trans people, but the difference is those protections were never in place to begin with. Whereas we had those protections and then removed them. So, what's that tell you? It tells you that some of us are going backwards. And I'm embarrassed to say that my state is really slamming things in reverse. Trying to go backwards to a time that never truly existed. But again, the overall point is that we're all basically the same. We think differently, which is good. And we all look different, which is that's neither good nor bad, it's just reality. Personally, I like seeing the variations in colors and heights and, body shapes. Pretty much whatever differences there may be, those differences are outnumbered by the similarities. Differences are outnumbered by the similarities. And I think that should really be our takeaway. And I don't understand why we are going backwards on this. Actually, I think I do understand why we're going backwards on this. What I don't understand is why so many people are buying into it and going along with it. I know the reason. It's because the politicians need us to fight each other for their own power. And we need to fight them instead of each other. We need to fight them instead of each other. So with that in mind, I'll catch y'all next time.